Concerto for Orchestra is one of the best second violin excerpts out there. It's certainly one of my favorites. I think it showcases the lower register of the instrument beautifully. There's so much going on rhythmically, and it's really fun to play around with that. And of course, the character is one of a kind. And so it's a really fun excerpt to play once we kind of figure out some of the technical difficulties. So starting from the beginning, I begin this up on the G string, and a lot of orchestras play this passage that way as well. It sets the tone for kind of the sound world that we're looking for, something that's deep and rich and gutsy. I play the first note with a third finger, so I play 3, 1 is my fingering. And you want to grab the string. It's not necessarily a from the string stroke, but you want to grab it and articulate each of these down bows as you play these first opening notes. So there's good articulation, kind of a good bite to each note. And I split up that long B just so that I can be in the right place in the bow to go on from there. So really, once you hit this lower B, you want to be thinking of the tempo. The first 2 notes, you kind of set it up, but once you hit that second measure, you really want to be thinking a strong pulse so that the rest of the excerpt comes from that pulse. Now, this is the fun bit that everyone is always practicing the most in this excerpt. So staying on the G string, so kind of tricky to get this grace note to speak. In a way, I'm imagining a little bit of an accent on those offbeats, or some kind of emphasis with my bow. And my bow is elongated on those 2nd and 4th, 8th notes, just to give enough space for the grace note to speak. So it's still short and articulate, but I'm making sure that I have enough bow to get all of those notes to speak well. Now this gliss, it's hard for me at least to vibrate on that downbeat in addition to doing the glissando. So I really focus on kind of glissing into that 2nd, 8th note and having good vibrato on that F sharp. So that you get this kind of smear effect. We're going for a gesture here. This is the kind of musical aspect of Bartók that we really need to bring out. So and each one of those accents in the 4th bar of this, they really go to the next bar. They really propel forward. Then we can move on from the G string to the D string, and I stay in 3rd position as we go on from here. So this is from measure 1, 2, 3, 274, the 2nd beat. Now, from the beginning to where I just reached at measure 277, that's the beginning of this big fugue section that the second violins obviously start off. And once we reach 277, the first violins come in with their iteration of that fugue theme. So in the next bar, we do have a mezzo forte written. So it's kind of written out in the music to give the other fugue statements some space to speak and to come out. But I think it's important to show something in the sound right at 277 that we're aware that the first violins come in with the theme there. So, so I do a little bit of a decay on that downbeat, and then I come up for the pickup to the next bar, so that I'm bringing out these notes that are important, but when I have kind of longer notes or sustained notes, I back away, and that's generally the case for the entire excerpt. Now, I play this off the string. I do it in the lower part of the bow towards the frog. And it's a nice kind of heavy brush stroke. So there's a lot of character to this stroke, and you want to keep the sound in mind as you go through this excerpt. It's something that's really rustic, really folksy. Now, of course, rhythmically, the challenge in this excerpt is maintaining tempo and maintaining pulse, but the committee is going to be listening for how you approach triplets versus how you approach eighth notes, and going back and forth between these triplets and duples, and and how can they feel jaunty and kind of dance-like in the Bartók sense, while really staying solid in the overall tempo. So this part, for example, really starts to show that, starting from measure 281. So you'll notice I'm playing mezzo forte. I'm bringing out these kind of rhythmic changes while staying in an overall steady tempo. And I'm also kind of playing with the shapes of the notes. When they go down, I try to go down. If there's something really interesting chromatically, I bring that out. When it goes up, I go up with a line. So I'm really trying to have a playful sense of phrasing here, because this music needs to be alive, right? This music should not be kind of sterile in any way. So rhythm is important, but you also have to kind of play with the phrasing to really make it come to life. Here, these eighth notes getting into measure 292. It's easy to rush through these ones especially. So really solid duples. Now, here, starting in measure 300, we have more kind of quarter note and eighth note rhythms going on. So it's a little bit less busy, and I think we can back off with the sound here. Even though there's no dynamic change, we can kind of show that musically it's a little bit less busy, a little bit less playful. So I'm not forcing the sound in any way. I'm kind of just making my articulations at the beginnings of each note and not sustaining too much through them. So if you hear, I'm just subtly kind of backing away from all the long notes. Nothing obviously kind of, nothing very obvious. but this is just kind of sensitive chamber music playing. So you really have to imagine that you're playing with the rest of the group, and what you would do naturally in a group setting, you want to do while you're on stage by yourself in an audition setting. Now give yourself a little bit of space before this subito piano in measure 311. I actually move my bow to the middle of the bow too much of a retake, but just a little bit so that I'm in the right part of the bow, and it helps to also set up this subito piano as well, timing wise. Now make sure to come up for this mezzo forte. And these are really fun to play with, really be, you're playing absolute triplets and absolute eighth notes, and you really want to bring out kind of going back and forth between the two. And always with a good sound. When we are playing kind of these heavy, articulate, off the stroke sorts of bow strokes, it's easy for the sound to crack because maybe we're using too much bow pressure and relying not quite enough on the natural weight of the bow and the resonance of the bow. So remember, to get a great sound with all of this very articulate kind of music, release your bow. Find areas of release, and you're going for attack and release. And releasing the bow is as important in an articulate bow stroke as the attack itself. It just cleans it up and it makes the sound ring, and it also kind of helps you physically get through a demanding excerpt like this. Thanks so much for tuning in to an excerpt today. I hope you were able to take away some helpful tips for practicing Bartók's Concerto for Orchestra. I look forward to seeing you on the next episode.